Mark! What are you doing here at this hour? When I answered the doorbell, there stood my grandson, Mark, completely drenched. And as Mark looked down and turned around, his sister Aisha was sound asleep on his back. I gently took Aisha from him. Could you keep her over for dinner and the night? Mark's voice was almost drowned out by the sound of the heavy rain. First things first, come inside. I took Aisha inside, and my husband took Mark. We couldn't help but marvel at how much our grandson had grown since we last saw him 3 years ago. Contrary to us, Mark remained downcast, not touching the meal prepared for him. Mark, can you tell us what happened? Mark briefly looked up, but quickly averted his gaze when our eyes met. If you keep quiet, we won't understand anything. My husband, losing patience with Mark's attitude, spoke up more firmly. Mark flinched, then began to speak in a voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz. After speaking his mind, Mark finally said with determination, I'd be a burden if I stayed. Please take care of Aisha for me. With those words, Mark stood up and ran towards the entrance. My husband tried to stop him, but was brushed off by Mark, who had grown as tall as him. Damn it! I can't be looking after kids! My husband, furious, spat out those words before chasing after Mark again and grappling him in a bear hug. At least, take care of Aisha. Mark stopped resisting and hung his head low. My name is Mary. I live here with my husband, Jake. Looks like it's going to rain this evening. Every morning, my husband would mutter about the weather while flipping through the newspaper and nibbling on toast, crumbs falling on the paper. I always tell you, don't mess up the newspaper. Either eat or read. Mary, maybe you shouldn't hang the laundry outside today. He never listens to me. This is the usual scene at our house. My husband is 60, 2 years my senior, and is facing retirement this year. He has always been all about his job, with no hobbies to speak of. I heard some people suddenly start to decline or become recluses once they retire. It might be a good idea to find something to immerse yourself in, aside from work, before that happens. I remembered a conversation with a coworker. Dear, what are you going to do next year? You'll have a lot of time once you stop going to work. Well, my husband looked around and then gazed at a photo on the shelf. It showed me, my husband, our son Tom, his wife Rachel, and our grandchildren, Mark and Aisha, all smiling. Everyone had gentle smiles. It was taken at Aisha's first birthday party. I wonder how Mark and Aisha are doing. My husband mentioned the grandchildren's names. Who knows? We haven't seen our son's family for about 3 years now. They live about an hour's drive from us, a distance that would make it easy to visit any time, but it seems Rachel has been avoiding us. And it seems Tom has also become quite distant, perhaps feeling overshadowed by Rachel. Even when I send emails saying I want to meet up, I get turned down every time, and she doesn't even reply to my New Year's cards. Mark used to love tuna, didn't he? Yeah. He once told me he wanted to go tuna fishing together. What? I wonder when they made such a promise. Mark truly adored him, after all. Memories of Mark from when he was still in elementary school flood back to me. We had promised to go together once I retired, having plenty of time, but now Mark's a high school freshman and probably realizes tuna fishing isn't that simple. Jake says this and sips his tea with a lonely smile. They used to visit us often in the past. The change in the relationship with our son's family became apparent after Tom remarried Rachel 5 years ago. After graduating high school, Tom started working at a construction company. There, he met a woman 4 years his senior from the office and married her first. Their child was Mark. His first wife was calm and solid, possibly due to her being older, guiding Tom in a positive direction. Seeing Tom, who hardly did any housework at home, skillfully making soup was a real surprise to me. I was always grateful to her for marrying Tom, but each time she would just laugh and shake her head. Tom is so honest. When I showed him how I, being left-handed, cut carrots with a knife, he faithfully tried to do it with his left hand, even though he's right-handed. Oh my. Thanks to Tom, our home is always filled with laughter. It seemed like the three of them were living happily, and it made me happy. I'm sorry for suddenly asking you to pick up Mark from daycare the other day. Here, your favorite pickles. That's sweet of you. But don't worry about it. I'm off work by 4 p.m., so I can always pick him up. Thank you. She was always polite and maintained a good relationship with us. I thought this happy life would continue forever. But when Mark was 9, his mother was diagnosed with cancer. The cancer was advanced, and she was given 6 months to live. I'm sorry. Please take care of Mark. She said this to me when we were alone in the hospital room. Don't apologize. I would take your place if I could. I was moved to tears. I've been very happy these past 10 years. Tom and Mark have given me a lifetime of laughter. I want them to keep smiling, always. You guys too. With that, she gave a gentle smile. And true to the prognosis, she quietly passed away on a crisp autumn day. Then it was just the father and son, but Tom was busy with work, coming home late, so I started visiting Mark's house every day after my part-time job. On weekends, if Tom was busy, I gladly took Mark to our place. Is there somewhere you want to go? Let's go wherever Grandpa and Grandma want to. Mark was never selfish and always observed adult behavior closely. I was a bit worried about him being too reserved with us, his grandparents. Let's take good care of Mark. Yes, we should. So, it was moments like these, when we all went shopping together, and Mark would say, I want to eat steak, that we truly delighted in hearing his genuine feelings. I'm thinking of remarrying. Tom told us this when Mark was 11. The woman was Rachel, a 23-year-old. Rachel was 10 years younger than Tom, working part-time at a tavern. It seems they hit it off when Tom happened to visit the tavern for a drink. I couldn't help but feel anxious, and when Tom brought her home, that anxiety only deepened. Nice to meet y'all. Rachel arrived in a baggy sweatshirt and a miniskirt, sporting large earrings and carrying a designer bag. She was beautiful, but her youth seemed to betray a lack of common sense. You're only 23, right? If you marry Tom, you'll suddenly become the mom of an 11-year-old. You sure about that? I asked earnestly. We'll make it work, right? I think it'll be fine. Rachel and Tom's casual banter made my husband and I exchange looks. Despite our unease, we said nothing, and 2 months later, Tom remarried. Could we live in the house your brother lived in before moving abroad? We want to save for the kids' future. For years prior, when my husband's brother's family moved overseas, he was told to use their house as he wished, and the ownership was transferred to my husband. He intended to rent it out, but had left it idle due to his busy schedule. It'd help if you lived there. But it's in a different school district, so Mark would have to transfer. It's okay. He'll adjust to the new school quickly. And so, they moved to my husband's house, about an hour's drive away, starting their life as a family of 3. I used to see Mark almost daily, but since Rachel quit her job to become a stay-at-home mom, I no longer needed to visit, and our meetings became infrequent. Still, Tom would drop Mark off at our place about 3 times a month. The reason being, Tom and Rachel wanted some time alone, which was complicated, but we were happy to spend time with Mark. Mark seemed to be considerate of Tom and Rachel, which worried me. Mark, are you enjoying your new life? Yeah, it's fun. I was sad about switching elementary schools, but I've made friends already. I guess it was tough being moved because of your parents. I wanted to ask about Rachel but hesitated to mention her by name, so I didn't inquire further. Well then, how about we go for some steak with us today? Really? Yay! I'm gonna eat a big one. Seeing Mark's carefree smile brought me a bit of relief. A year later, Aisha was born. Her first meal celebration, Tom and Rachel started asking for money under various pretexts. I don't remember doing this for Mark. I felt mixed emotions, but for cute little Aisha's sake, and also for Mark's allowance, I sent more money whenever they reached out. Once Aisha could hold her head up, Tom often left the kids with us. We need a break once in a while. You must be happy to play with your grandkids, aren't you? After handing over the kids, Tom and Rachel would quickly leave. I had mixed feelings watching them go, but seeing Mark, Aisha, and my husband playing happily together warmed my heart. Mark adored his much younger sister, and Aisha seemed to trust him completely, stopping her tears whenever Mark sang to her softly. Aisha seems to place absolute trust in Mark, too. Even when she's upset and crying, if Mark gently sings to her, she stops crying. Though we were worried about Tom and Rachel, we were delighted to spend time with our grandchildren. However, after Aisha turned 1, Mark and Aisha stopped coming over. Maybe Mark's busy with middle school. I thought to myself and decided to call Tom. I'll be in the area this Sunday, mind if I stop by to see you? Well, I'll have to check with Rachel. His evasive response was followed by a curt email stating they had plans. Despite repeated attempts to reach out to Tom and Rachel, we were never allowed to see Mark and the kids again. Did I say something to offend them? I was always willing to help financially and with taking care of the grandkids. All we could do was hope Mark and Aisha would be happy. That was our only wish. 3 years passed. Mark became a freshman in high school and Aisha turned 4. On a day when not seeing our grandchildren had become the norm, I happened to spot Mark. That day, I had gone to the next town over with a friend to see a movie. Around 5 p.m., while waiting for the bus at the bus stop, a bike swiftly passed by, and it was Mark. He was carrying a square backpack with the name of a Chinese restaurant chain on it, seemingly making deliveries. Mark. I called out his name in surprise, but Mark didn't look back. Could it have been someone else? I immediately told my husband about it when I got home, but he was slow to believe the story. There's no way I'd mistake our grandson's face. But a high schooler doing delivery jobs. Is Tom's income that low? I don't know. We've been sending $500 each for their birthdays as a gift, but maybe that's not enough for Mark. Even though we couldn't see them, we liked to think that Tom's family was happily living their lives without us knowing. However, seeing Mark that day suddenly filled me with anxiety. And then, 2 weeks later, something shocking happened. It was on a day of heavy rain. Be careful when you come back from your part-time job today, there's a severe thunderstorm warning starting from noon. As usual, my husband said this while opening the newspaper and eating breakfast. True to his words, the weather turned terrible in the afternoon. My husband came home around 8 p.m., completely drenched. The heavy rain was pounding on the roof, making the TV hard to hear. Guess it's time for bed. Just as we were about to head to the bedroom, the doorbell rang. Who could it be at this hour? When we checked the monitor, there was Mark, looking downcast. Honey, it's Mark! We rushed to open the door. There stood Mark, soaked to the skin. Mark, what are you doing here at this hour? Then, Mark turned around, still looking downcast. Is Aisha with you? I took Aisha, who was sleeping on Mark's back. Could you let my sister stay for dinner and the night? Mark murmured, dripping rain from his bangs. Come in anyway. I took Aisha, and my husband took Mark inside. Aisha was wearing a raincoat, and apparently, Mark had sacrificed himself to keep her dry by holding the umbrella over her. She wasn't wet at all despite the heavy rain. Since she was sound asleep, we decided to let Aisha sleep in the bedroom. As for Mark, soaked through, we directed him straight to the bathroom. In the meantime, we prepared some warm food. It's Grandpa's, so it might be a bit big. No, that's not it. Mark, you've grown so much since I last saw you. Now that I think about it, I hadn't had the chance to really look at them because everything was so rushed, but Aisha had grown so much she was hardly recognizable from the baby she once was. Seeing our grandchildren's growth after 3 years brought a smile to our faces. Contrary to us, Mark sat in front of the food we had prepared without touching it, head bowed the whole time. Mark, can you tell us what happened? Mark looked up for a moment, but as soon as our eyes met, he quickly averted his gaze. Mark, if you keep quiet, you won't understand anything. Frustrated with Mark's demeanor, his husband raised his voice. Mark flinched, then slowly began to speak in a voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz. I'm not liked by Mom. According to Mark, Rachel had never been fond of him from the start. Yet, Mark was happy to have a mother and tried hard to be liked by Rachel. However, Rachel's attitude towards Mark grew even colder after Aisha was born. I really love Aisha. After all, she's my sister. But Mom easily tells me, since we're not blood related, I won't take care of you. Dad, too, sided with Mom and never helped me. The truths that came to light were suffocating. I had assumed the four of us were living happily. My own misconceptions filled me with intense regret. Why didn't you come to Grandma's house sooner? Because I thought Grandpa and Grandma didn't like us. Mark started to cry. Mark said that they stopped visiting because, according to Rachel, the grandparents didn't want to take care of the grandchildren. That's not true. Maybe Rachel didn't let us meet. I tried to argue, but Mark continued, tears flowing. Today, Mom didn't prepare dinner for me again. Then Aisha scolded her for me. Rachel, furious that her own daughter sided with Mark and betrayed her, drove Mark and Aisha out into the pouring rain. You remembered how to get here, huh? The husband patted Mark's head. After buying an umbrella and a raincoat for Aisha, I ran out of money. I took the train as far as I could and walked the rest here. That's why it's so late. I'm sorry. No, Mark, you've got nothing to apologize for. I'm just a burden. Please take care of Aisha. Saying this, Mark stood up and ran towards the entrance. Hey! The husband tried to stop him, but was shrugged off by Mark, who had grown as tall as him. Damn it! I can't take care of a kid! Enraged, the husband spat out those words, then chased after Mark again and caught him in a tight hold. No. At least take care of Aisha. Mark stopped resisting and hung his head low. Catching up, I took Mark from my husband and, rubbing his back, said, Mark, you've got it all wrong. We've always wanted to see you. But Tom and Rachel wouldn't let us. Really? Mark finally looked me in the eyes. I told Mark about all the times we tried to visit, and how, unable to meet, we at least sent money for Mark and Aisha's birthdays through Rachel to clear up the misunderstanding. Mark looked shocked throughout. Mark seemed surprised throughout. But it seemed he believed my words, as the despair on his face clearly changed, and he looked better. I didn't know anything. Not even about the money. I guess Mom was using it for herself. I was stunned. I am taken aback. Then Mark told me he barely received money for high school fees, and received nothing for lunch or stationery, managing somehow with his part-time job. At the Chinese restaurant? You knew? I saw someone who looked like you delivering food. I tried to call out, but he rode past on his bike before I noticed. Mark nodded sadly. Mom stopped making dinner for me once I got to high school. The place provides meals, so I save on dinner. But today, I unexpectedly had no work. Sure enough, when I got home, there was no dinner prepared for me. Then Aisha stood up for me. Tears welled up in Mark's eyes again. It's all right now. I stroke Mark's back. Was Tom cold to you as well? My husband asks, holding back his anger. Yeah. It felt like he was just following Mom's orders. I liked the Mom we had before. Dad used to be kinder then too. With that, Mark starts crying loudly. My husband is at a loss. For a while, only Mark's crying could be heard in the house, but as time passed and Mark had calmed down somewhat, my husband said, Mark, the kids I said earlier was directed at Tom and the others, not you and Aisha. Grandpa and Grandma will always protect you too. That's right. You don't have to worry about anything anymore. Oh, has Aisha woken up? Glancing towards the living room door, I see Aisha peeking out from behind a wall, looking at us with a wary expression. Aisha, do you remember Grandpa and Grandma? Aisha shakes her head emphatically. My husband and I exchange looks and chuckle. Right. The last time we saw you was on your first birthday, remember? Showing her a photo from her first birthday party that we have displayed, Aisha's face lights up. Then she runs over to Mark. Mark. What's up? I'm hungry. My husband and I look at each other again, this time with smiles. Come on, I'll warm up the food so both of you can eat plenty. Here Mark, serve some rice for Aisha. You know her best. Aisha waking up brought a slight smile back to Mark's face. The two of them ate their meal with relish and soon fell asleep together in bed, cozy and close. Watching their innocent sleeping faces, I hold back tears. Having made them go through so much hardship, we are determined now more than ever to protect Mark and Aisha. My husband and I quietly make this resolve and get into the car. Naturally, we're heading to Tom's house. The lights inside the house are still on, and when we ring the doorbell, Tom appears. Just a minute. Despite Tom's attempt to stop us, we make our way into the house. Entering the room, we see several empty alcohol cans on the table, and Rachel, leaning on the sofa, laughing carelessly with a beer in hand as she watches TV. What brings Mom and Dad here at this hour? As if you don't know. Remember what you've done. My husband's shout startles Rachel. Though initially surprised, Rachel puts down her beer can, sits up straight, and glares at us defiantly. So, Mark and Aisha came to you, did they? They arrived soaking wet. It seems you've been lying about us hating Mark. The money we've been sending as gifts for the grandchildren hasn't been reaching them at all. What's your intention? We're their parents. It's none of your business. Tom sits next to Rachel, and they both glare at us together. Then they accuse us of being foolish for believing everything Mark says. Mark and Aisha's custody belongs to us. We don't want outsiders meddling. We've been raising them properly. Properly? You've been resenting Mark, haven't you? At that moment, the doorbell rings. Who's next? Muttering, Tom goes to open the door, only to find two police officers standing there. Yes, I had explained the situation to the police from the car, asking them to come to Tom's house. Without any discussion, the officers enter to look for the children. Where have Mark and Aisha gone in this heavy rain? Neither Tom nor Rachel could answer that question. In front of everyone, I detailed the events of today. We'll need to take Tom and Rachel to the station for further questioning. Thus, the two were taken to the police station. The next day, we were also called to the station to give our accounts. Mark was questioned alone, but Aisha, being so young, was allowed to have someone with her. My mom and dad, they just ignore my brother. They don't even make dinner for him. My brother, he goes to school during the day and works at night. He's really busy and it's tough on him. I want to help my brother. 4-year-old Aisha searched hard for her words as she spoke to us. Despite her young age, she too was hurt by the abnormal family situation. Tears came to my eyes. Aisha looked at me, puzzled. Why are you crying? The cops are the heroes of justice. My kindergarten teacher said so. It's going to be okay. They'll help us. Haha, that's right. Everything's going to be okay. Thank you very much. With that, Aisha said to the police officer and smiled brightly. After the grandchildren's statements were taken, it was our turn, my husband and I. Regarding your grandchildren's future, we expressed our desire not to return Mark and Aisha to their parents and our intention to take full responsibility for raising them. The police advised us to consult a lawyer. As advised, we consulted a lawyer who was an acquaintance of my husband. 5 days later, the lawyer went to talk to Tom and his wife, who were in custody. He discussed the following 4 points with them. First, our intention to adopt Mark and Aisha, thereby gaining custody of them. Second, that Tom and his wife are to have no further contact with Mark and Aisha. Third, that we will not provide any further assistance. Fourth, the house where Tom and his wife are living is scheduled to be demolished next month, so they must vacate immediately. Tom and his wife initially reacted with fury. Don't you have any parental feelings? To this, the lawyer calmly replied, Mark is your biological child, isn't he? Do you think you have the right to say such things after what you've done to him? Silenced by the lawyer's sound argument, Tom had nothing more to say. Afterward, the adoption of Mark and Aisha was successfully completed, and we are lovingly raising them, enjoying peaceful times. Tom repeatedly contacted us opposing the demolition, but the contractors proceeded as scheduled. As his house was being demolished, Tom dropped to his knees, unable to stand up for a while. Additionally, rumors of abuse also circulated at his company, leading to Tom taking unauthorized absences. And so, he was dismissed from his job, leaving Tom and Rachel penniless. For a while, they lived quietly somewhere, but then Tom came to me asking for help. If you persist, I'll call the police. After that, he quieted down, perhaps giving up. Since then, I've known nothing about the two of them. On the other hand, living with us, Mark and Aisha initially felt tense, but the time spent together naturally eased that tension. Mark quit his part-time job and is now able to focus on his studies and club activities, happily going to school every day. Grandpa, what time are we leaving tomorrow? High tide is at 8 a.m., so we'll leave at 3 a.m. Wake me up if I'm not up. What's that about? My husband, having retired, started fishing with Mark. Though they haven't caught any tuna, they've caught squid, sea bream, flounder, and more, becoming completely captivated by fishing. So, standing beside me, my husband clasped his hands. All right, I'll bring breakfast. Some bread, right? Of course, thank you. Just then, our daughter Aisha toddled over, her cheeks puffed up. If we're leaving at 3 o'clock, what time does Grandma have to wake up? Grandma must be really busy. Indeed, she's quite the girl. Aisha was truly something else, even at just 5 years old. She was our family's little idol and my confidant. I'm sorry. From now on, I'll do it myself. I'll get squid you like, Aisha. Really? Yay! Grandpa and Mark, you guys try your best too. Her enthusiasm was adorable. What would we do in our retirement without anything to keep us busy? But those worries were unnecessary. What would we do if we had nothing to do in retirement? Such worries were needless. Thanks to Mark and Aisha, we enjoyed sparkling days together every day. We couldn't be sure if the scars in their hearts would ever fully heal. But we hoped that Mark and Aisha could feel this place as a sanctuary, a place where we laughed together as a family, and a place they could always come home to.